I'm going to use fictitious names and not reveal any stuff that could be used to identify the parties. As such, I'll be referring to myself as Pete and my fiancée as Laura. I and Laura officially started dating 6 years ago, got engaged 2 years ago, and had been living together for about 16 months when all this happened. I have a good job working for a supplier to the forest industry, while Laura works in the front office of a medical practice. Her office is located about 20 minutes away from our small town in one of the nearby larger towns. Being small, our town is a tight-knit community. It's surrounded by the great outdoors, while being just a short drive from a cluster of larger towns with all the amenities one needs to live well. My relationship with Laura was awesome in every way, and there were no warning signs of problems. The only thing that somewhat concerned me was that Laura was divorced. She told me that she and her husband married young and just grew apart. Since all that happened more than 5 years before we met, I didn't see the need to investigate the matter and just accepted her explanation. Back then, Laura was living in Portland, and after her divorce, she got a job and moved back home with her parents who live in one of the nearby towns I previously described. In addition to being divorced, another thing that my friends teased me about was the fact that Laura was nearly 6 years older than me, but nonetheless, they all took turns giving me grief about it, calling me cougar prey. In fairness to Laura, I must say that they all really liked her, and so did their significant others. She was part of our tribe. Now I'll get to the night where things imploded. I, along with 3 other friends, went on a fishing weekend. This is something we do several times per year. There's a tributary to the Columbia River up in the Pacific Northwest, just a short drive from our homes, and the fishing there is awesome. Though it's close by, we stay at a cabin right on the water and just do manly things while there, no women allowed. We just fish, do some hiking, chop wood, eat like pigs, drink a little, and smoke a few cigars. It's a great time, and we've been doing this for about 9 years now. On these weekends, we all take Friday off and meet up at the cabin after work on Thursday evening. We usually stay over 2 nights, then head back home in time for Saturday dinner and spend the rest of the weekend with our ladies. For this particular trip, we all arrived on Thursday evening like normal and cooked up some steaks. After dinner, we were sitting around the fire pit, talking and sipping on bourbon when I got a call from one of the guys I work with. He told me that he and his wife were out for dinner in a nearby town and they saw Laura there. I asked him if he said hello or talked to Laura. He said he didn't because she was with other people. I told him he should have, as she was just out with some friends. He then reluctantly told me that Laura was initially there with 3 other women and they all left, but 10 minutes later, she came back in and sat down at the bar next to a guy. She hugged the guy and then started rubbing his back and then locked lips. I couldn't believe it and asked if she was still there, but he said no, advising they left together about 15 minutes ago. I thanked him and hung up. He then sent me a couple of pictures, including one of Laura and the guy passionately kissing. The dude in the picture looked like a total loser. I was obviously upset and checked her phone location and saw it was back at my house. I told my guys I had to go home and see what the heck was going on. They asked why and I explained. They all told me I couldn't drive as I drank too much, but I said I didn't care and that I was leaving. At that point, they decided that our friend Phil, who doesn't drink, would drive us all to my house. They wanted to be there to support me, so we all piled into Phil's truck and headed in that direction. On the way, they all told me that whatever I do, I needed to remain calm and to not do anything stupid. But I responded and said I'll try my best, but asked that they make sure I don't. Our other friend, who I'll call Scott, had gone through infidelity with his first wife, so he suggested that once we get there, we must record everything for our own protection. On the way, I kept saying maybe it's all a misunderstanding, but deep down I knew that was unlikely. My place is a small but super nice cabin that I bought on land contract from the current owner. I remodeled the entire cabin myself with the help of my friends, of course. The cabin is located in a deeply forested area on a gravel road just outside town. There are only a few other homes on the road, so it's lightly traveled. When we turned onto the road to make the short drive back to my house, we had Phil turn off the headlights and only use the running lights the rest of the way in order to be stealthy. I swear, it took us nearly 15 minutes to go less than a mile driving in the dark like that. When we got there, Laura's car was not visible. However, there was a black Chevy Impala parked in front of the garage. The car had Minnesota plates, which seemed odd, but then we saw the sticker on the back window and realized it was a rental. Phil pulled his truck right up behind the Impala to block the car from leaving. The house was pitch dark, with the exception of a few path lights out front. Before going in, they all asked me if I was ready. I said yes, and we all started recording. It was intense. As soon as the door was open, I quietly made a beeline right to the master bedroom with the three of them following me. I opened the door, but the room was empty. I then moved quickly across the hall to the spare bedroom, opened the door, turned on the lights, and there was Laura bouncing on the guy from the bar like she was riding a ducking bronco. Oh my gosh. I'll never forget that scene, though I sure wish I could. I screamed, "What the heck is going on here?" Startled, Laura twisted around and literally dove off the guy onto the floor. The guy then let out a blood-curdling scream. It was so loud, Phil, Mark, and Scott blasted into the room as they thought I had started beating the guy, but that was not the case. It was just this slovenly guy laying there in excruciating pain after Laura's abrupt dismount. At this point, Laura had crawled to the corner and completely covered her face and body with a bed quilt. She curled up there and started crying loudly, saying she was sorry and could explain. I then pulled the blanket and sheets off the bed, leaving the AP laying there in all his unglory, covering his stuff with both hands and wincing in pain and repeatedly apologizing. I asked the guy his name. Nervously, he gave only his first name, so I picked up his pants off the floor, pulled out his wallet, took out his driver's license, and read aloud his full name and address. I then had Scott take a couple of pictures of the license for me. I then asked how he knew Laura. He said they used to work together. I asked how long he'd been ducking her. He said it was just this one time. I laughed and said, "You're lying." The guy then said he and Laura dated 9 or 10 years ago when they worked together, but this was the first time they had met up since. Keep in mind, at this point, my guys were still recording everything and Laura was still hiding under the quilt in the corner crying. Through it all, I stayed strong, surprisingly. I eventually told the guy it was time for him to leave. He got up and went for his clothes, still holding his junk in pain. I told him, "Hold on, you're not getting your clothes unless you take your little lady with you." Hearing this, Laura started crying harder, pleading with me not to make her go. The dude then told me, "Please man, just let me go and you'll never hear from me again." I told him that we parked behind him and will be glad to move as soon as he and his little lady leave the house. The AP then started coaxing Laura to go with him so he could leave. She refused and started sobbing for mercy like a mental patient. Finally, after nearly 45 minutes of this lunacy, she agreed to leave. I handed the guy his clothes, and he slowly got dressed, clearly still in pain. Laura wasn't moving though, so I told the guy his little lady needs to get dressed and get out. Laura started again to insanely cry, but eventually got dressed and walked outside with her AP. Just before Phil was about to move the truck, Scott suggested that we load up the guy's car with all of Laura's stuff. This way, I could fully get rid of her in one night. I agreed, and we began the task. We went to the bedroom and just started grabbing her clothes off hangers. All her shoes, brass, panties, makeup, personal products, keepsakes, jewelry, you name it. We combed the entire place until we got everything of Laura's we could find. We jammed the trunk and back seats so full that the trunk barely closed and the back window was completely blocked by her stuff piled to the roof. Impalas are big cars with huge trunks, so you can imagine just how much we had to jam in that trunk to fill it up. During the time we were putting her things in the car, Laura had stopped crying and just appeared to be in shock. She just sat there staring straight ahead without blinking, shaking like she was freezing. Whether she was faking the shakes, who knows, but the scene was dramatic nonetheless. Meanwhile, her AP sat head down behind the wheel looking at stuff on his phone. We figured he was probably searching for the nearest walk-in clinic or emergency room to get his junk examined. After everything was packed, we moved the truck and they drove off. We all decided to stay at my house that night. In the morning, we loaded the soiled mattress and a few things we missed into the truck. I drove Laura's car and Mark rode with me as he led the way over to Laura's mom's house, while Phil and Scott followed in the truck. On the way, I called her mom to let her know we were coming over. To my surprise, Laura wasn't there. We all wondered where she spent the night. When we arrived, I went in to explain to her mom what happened, but didn't share any of the videos. I had a lot of respect for Laura's mom and didn't want to upset her more than she already was. Our conversation was very emotional. I left Laura's car in the driveway and gave the keys to her mom. She opened the garage door and we moved the mattress and various miscellaneous items into the garage. On the way back to my house, we stopped at Ace Hardware and picked up new door locks. We went to my house, changed out the locks, and then we all headed back to the cabin. We spent the rest of Friday and Saturday doing all the normal things we do out there, and my friends were making sure they kept me in good spirits. Surprisingly, I handled everything well. While I was obviously upset, I didn't break down once, but I kept focusing on the bright side and my future. Laura tried reaching me all weekend, but I turned my phone off and just ignored her. In the end, I realized how lucky I was to find out what kind of woman Laura was before marrying her. I admitted to my guys that I was planning to ask her to marry me sometime in the near future, but I guess she really blew things that night in more ways than one. Laura and I were done, and there's absolutely no chance for reconciliation of any kind, not even a friendship. I'm completely done and would prefer to never see or hear from her again. Some might say my stance is extreme, but I would tell those people you can't really understand the situation unless you've experienced it yourself. I know myself well, and the best thing for my sanity is for me to learn from this and move forward with my life. Moving forward without Laura was not as difficult as it sounds, as the Laura I loved for nearly 6 years died the night she gave herself to the other guy. For me, I don't give second chances to anyone. Burn me once and we're done, and not just with women, but with everything. Now, just to put in some details about Laura and her lover boy. A few weeks later, I found out he's 39 years old, married with 2 teenage kids and lives in the Portland area. By the way, I'm 28 and Laura is almost 34. After I ended things with her, I reached out to the guy's wife through social media. As it turned out, she was already in the process of divorcing him, but he had been begging her to reconsider. The evidence I provided sealed their fate. What she then told me blew my mind. She said Laura and her husband worked together 11 years ago and had an affair. I interjected and said her husband told me they dated. She said that was a lie, they never dated, that they were both married and cheated on their spouses. She said she discovered the affair and then told Laura's husband, who immediately divorced her. Laura's explanation about her marriage ending because they drifted apart was a lie. The guy's wife further explained that instead of divorcing, she made her husband move out and they lived apart for nearly 5 years while still making him pay for everything. Eventually, she let him move back in for the kids, which she said in hindsight was a mistake. She said she's got a great job now. Her kids are grown and she no longer needs him. She didn't come right out and say it, but from her description of things, she's been getting her needs met by others while having minimal intimacy with her husband since he cheated on her. Now, there's a couple of things I must add here. The guy has an okay job, but I make at least $30,000 more than him. He's 5 feet 9 inches tops and is out of shape and flabby. As far as looks go, he's average at best. I must also add that his package was well below average. I know this because I unfortunately saw it firsthand the night I confronted them. Regardless of his shortcomings though, the guy obviously has something Laura can't resist. Maybe it's some sort of kink fetish or something, who knows. As for Laura, her mother tells me she's an emotional mess. She misses me terribly and is truly regretful. I did agree to have one final conversation with her, which took place a few months after D-Day. I did it for Laura's mom as she begged me to just let her apologize. I agreed, with the understanding that I would be recording the call. On the call, she said all the things you would expect. How sorry she was, she misses me so much, she regrets everything, the affair meant nothing, I'm the only man she ever loved, yada yada. I listened to her, and when she finished, I asked if that was all she had to say. She said yes, then asked me how I was doing. I told her I was doing great now, which made her cry. I then politely ended the call, and that was the last contact I had with her. Looking back, I would have done some things differently, like probing more into the reason why her marriage ended. But I realize now that getting into a relationship with a woman is a high-risk game. No matter what precautions you take, it's never going to be fail-safe. You just never know how she's going to turn out. Well, as for me, I'm taking a break from women now. Interestingly enough, the AP's wife messaged me and told me she found me attractive and said if I ever wanted to get a little revenge, she would gladly oblige. No joke, she came right out and propositioned me like that. I politely told her thanks but no thanks. Two wrongs don't make it right, as they say. So that's all, folks. It's over. I hope my story can help others who are working through infidelity and all the loss, pain, and humiliation that comes with it. One recommendation I have for those of you who are is to get yourself a good support system. Things would have turned out much worse for me that night had my friends not been with me. Stay strong and live well. Pete. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I'll see you again. Take care.